Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 80 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, and thanks so much for listening. My name is Tim Topham, and I'm the teacher behind the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the piano teaching blog at timtopham.com, and the InnerCircle Piano Teaching Community. My passion is supporting creative piano teaching, whether that's through podcasts like this, or the hundreds of articles on my blog, the training courses, downloads, lesson plans, or the benefits of membership of my community. The goal is the same: to hold your hand when you need it, to push you along, to give you a heap of great ideas each week, to streamline your business and productivity, to help you set and achieve goals, and ultimately to help you provide the richest, most exciting and fun learning experiences possible for your piano students. Today's show notes are all over at timtopham.com/episode 80. So today we're continuing to explore this month's theme of teaching beginners and lesson planning by looking at beginner games and activities. The best teaching of beginners, in my opinion, has got to be interactive, exploratory, varied, and above all, it has to be lots of fun, right? One of the best ways to ensure your student is learning and enjoying is to get off the bench and play some musical games with them. And so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. You're going to meet my guest in just a moment, but I did want to mention that they have put together an awesome freebie download for you today. What we've done is we've got 3 of my guests' top games for beginners, and we're giving away a pack of them with full instructions and everything you need to print out, including full color artwork. It's all ready to go. And the 3 games, which we'll find out about today, are called Dynamo, Signature Sprint, and Line Space Leapfrog. You're going to absolutely love them, and they're all 100% free to download from the show notes page. So if you're ready to grab that, timtopham.com/episode 80. where you'll also find a full transcript and links to everything we talk about today. My guest today is a piano teacher, blogger, and creator of inspiring resources for piano teachers. She actually studied fashion design and worked in the industry for almost 3 years before going full-time with the piano teaching. She loves getting piano students learning through laughter and exploring the diverse world of music making through improvisation, composition, and games. And here's a little interesting fact. She's actually set herself the goal this year to learn to read and write the first 800 Chinese characters, and she's already up to 148. So welcome to the show, Nicola Cantan.
Hi, Tim. Great to be here.
So quickly tell us about this Chinese character goal, because this was a bit of a surprise to me.
Well, my husband is Chinese, so that explains it a little bit.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I speak a little bit. I understand more than I speak. And I learned quite a few years back of the characters, but I stopped before I got to 800. And basically, you can't read anything until you get to 800.
Right.
So that's why that specific goal is I could read simplified text if I got to 800 and I could actually move forward with it. So that's the idea.
And I think the number 8 is quite a special number for Chinese, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lucky. They have
lucky number.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow, what a fantastic side hustle you've got going on there. That's great.
The project.
Now, I'm very excited to have Nicola on the show because she is actually an extra special guest, as she's a member of my team, and not many people actually know this. Nicola has been helping me with these podcasts for well over a year now, and has in fact recently just taken on the job of my podcast producer. So I can't believe I didn't know about the fashion industry thing either, Nicola. This is really, really cool. And you, of course, knowing my story about starting with my music and then going away from it for a few years and coming back, we've got a little bit of similarity there. I think it's great.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Now, quite a few people have asked me how on earth I get everything done while I'm teaching, particularly last year when I was teaching full-time for the last 3 years, and I'm doing speaking and traveling and blogging and all this kind of stuff. And look, I've got to say it's because of people like Nicola who I have to help me. So we're actually going to do a bit of a behind-the-scenes podcast and video series a little bit later this this year, probably in April, I think we're recording that, because I know a lot of people are quite interested in what goes on behind the scenes of this podcast. So we might see Nicola again in time. But let's get back to today's content. Our focus is on teaching beginners through games, and Nicola has created a heap of fantastic games for her students at her blog, which is called colourfulkeys.ie, and we'll give you the link to that a little bit later on. Firstly, what ages and abilities and students do you mainly teach today, Nicola?
So I run a small home studio. I have about 35 students. They're ranging from age 3.5 all the way up to retirees. I have a lot of beginners, but a mix of levels. But the thing that probably ties my students together is that for various reasons, they don't fit into the current system here. So either they're preschoolers, which most teachers here don't teach, or they're adult beginners, which again, teachers don't really advertise to because exams are huge here and that's what the focus is on. Mm-hmm. Or they might have special needs, or they have had training with another teacher and have kind of been close to quitting, and then, which I think you get a lot of those as well.
Absolutely.
They're being pushed through exams and they're almost about to quit, and their parents find me online and call me up, and I try and save them. So that's what a lot of them are. Yeah.
So it's often the slightly less usual students, I guess.
Yeah, just slightly out of the box, as it were.
Which is great, because it makes you as a teacher really have to think and plan and prepare and get outside the box.
Yeah, definitely. But it also is more fun. I couldn't see I know some teachers who they don't even let the students pick the exam pieces. So they do the same 3 pieces with a huge batch of grade 1 students all at the same time. I would be so bored. That sounds like hell. That's horrible.
Hell for you as a teacher, hell for the student. It's really sad. But look, it's so great that I like to think that times are changing and more people are like you and me.
I hope so.
Doing some creative things. So
some interesting stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. So look, let's just talk about games. Why are games a good idea for beginner students in particular?
Well, number one, they're fun. Yep. That's the main thing, is students should be having fun and they should want to come to piano lessons, and games are a part of that, or at least a help with it. And the other thing is they help students learn because they're more engaged. So you'll never find a student sort of glazing over or half falling asleep if they're playing a game. They're going to be engaged in the learning, and therefore they're going to learn more. And they also get to focus on the activity more, the concept more, if they're not having to do fine motor skills. That's a big one with the really young students, is they can really only focus on one thing at a time because they can't even hold a pencil properly yet. So trying to play the piano and understand whatever you're trying to teach them is often too much at one time. So it allows you to separate the concepts.
So have you got an example of one of those things that could be incredibly boring and just go straight over a student's head, or their eyes would glaze over, which could be made much more fun with a game?
Tons, but let me choose. So one simple example is with brand new preschool students, I use what I call the piano builder, which is just literally cutouts of groups of 2 black keys and 3 black keys. Okay, so they're just separate cards. And I have them lay those out on the floor to make a piano on the floor. And then we find different keys and stuff. But they'll find the groups of black keys much quicker than if we just sit at the piano and I tell them play all the groups of 2 black keys. They just see it as this sea of notes, a sea of keys, and they can't really focus on it. But if you take it away from the piano and then they can focus on that and then they bring it back to the piano, they have a much better understanding and they're able to play the simple piece that follows a pattern, going up the piano or something.
What a great example. And you've got lots of these little ideas, haven't you, of activities that you can do with students that you can just pull out of the hat. And that's what we're going to share with people a little bit today. What kinds of games do you actually use? Like, you've obviously created a whole lot of them. Do you use kind of board game things or iPad games, or are they all inventions of your own? What do you tend to use?
a huge mix, whatever will do the job. So there's always an intention behind it. So a lot of board games in more group situations, some in private lessons, but more group situations. Then a lot of tech and sort of little manipulatives like those piano builders, that sort of stuff, more in private lessons.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying you use tech more in groups? Is that what you said?
No, more the board games in groups.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do some group teaching as well as one-on-one?
Yeah, as a supplement. So I don't teach any students primarily in groups, but I do once a month workshops for all my private students.
Right.
And I also teach in partners as well. So I teach partner students.
Okay. Does everyone have partner lessons or just a few students?
No, just those who choose it. So
Okay.
often it'll be that they have a friend or whatever who would also like to start, and it's just a fun thing for them to do at the same time.
Okay.
Those lessons are a lot of fun.
And so that's 2 students in one lesson for the whole period of time, or is it with a crossover period?
For the whole period. I'm considering next year starting some more crossover type stuff, but I haven't done that yet.
Right. Okay. So mainly it's one-on-one. Sometimes you do 2 kids at a time if they're good friends, and regardless, they all come together once a month for a group class. And is that mixed? Is that similar abilities and ages?
No, it's mixed because it's whoever can come. So that's the only way I've been able to do it, because scheduling would I have to do those on a Sunday because otherwise I would just clash with all sorts of stuff. So it's whoever can come, and I figure out a way to make it work. Sometimes they'll be split into 2 smaller groups for games. But a lot of that, we also do a lot of improvisation and stuff at that. So then, the older student will take the accompaniment pattern and we split it up that way.
Brilliant. Ooh, we'll have to talk more about the mix of games and things you do in groups too then. Let's not talk about that today though. I've got to stay focused with us.
Yeah.
Do these kind of games work for all ages, or really is this just, are we talking about the youngest beginners?
With the board games, card games, that sort of stuff, I find I can get away with that if they're still in primary school. So up until age 12, that is here, and then they move to secondary school. And after that, they might sort of start to think maybe it's not cool enough. Some of them you could still play games forever, but a lot of them would be a bit more self-conscious after that. But I think even after that, if you take the same sense of game to anything you do, so it could just be that they're racing to, identify different key signatures or whatever if they're teenagers together. But you can make that into a sort of game without having the board game element that they might find kind of kiddish,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, making it somewhat competitive or racy could
yes.
in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
What would you say to teachers who are a little bit cautious of kind of getting off the bench and maybe onto the floor and walking around the room and things like that if they've not done this before? I mean, my traditional lessons, my teacher was a superstar and I love it a bit. But I don't remember a huge amount of time when we were kind of on the floor playing games necessarily. And so I imagine there's a lot of teachers who for this would be quite unusual for. What would you say if they haven't done this before?
Yeah, I mean, I know none of my 3 different teachers ever left their chair. So, yeah, I don't think it was that common.
Which is not good for their health either, just FYI. If you're sitting in a chair all day, just please make sure you stand up and walk around a little bit.
Exactly.
So not healthy.
Yeah. The first thing I'd say, I guess, applies more to women. I think a lot of piano teachers are women, though, and that's just to wear comfortable clothes. I like to look professional, but at the same time, all my clothes that I wear for teaching, I can move around in. I think you're very unlikely to get onto the floor if you literally can't, because a lot of clothing is just because of what you're wearing. But apart from that, getting over the nerves of it, I think you need to become a kid yourself. Like, you need to get down to their level, because that's how they're going to learn. Children learn when you interact with them in their way, and that mostly is playing. That's what they do. So I think you just need to get over yourself in the nicest possible way and get to where they need you to go, which is probably on the floor, playing with things, moving things around, especially if you're teaching the very young crowd.
And it's like if you're talking to a 3-year-old, you'll squat down. Well, I will anyway. I'll kneel down right? and talk to them face to face. And it's that same kind of thing. It's like getting on their level and making that connection. And as you know, I'm a huge believer in the importance of relationships in teaching. It's really is above all the thing that will have the biggest impact on anything you ever do. You could be the most traditional teacher. If you have a great relationship with your student, they'll do some fabulous things, right?
Exactly.
So if you can make that connection with the youngest beginners by just getting on the floor, having a laugh, that's what this is all about.
Yeah, and getting into their world. That's their world. You have to treat it the way they treat it.
Yeah.
So
and it's fun, right? It should be.
Yeah, it's way more fun.
It's way more fun than note correcting and pointing at middle C on the method book. That's what I say.
Yeah, and saying no, that note, no, that note, no, that note, over and over. Yeah.
What about time? What would you say to teachers who say, "Look, there's so much to do. I don't have time to actually play these games. They're just games anyway."
Well, they're much more than games, but with regards to finding specific time, there's a few things you can do to actually make more time, such as like the group lessons that I do, or having partner lessons, which can be longer, or having overlapping lessons, that sort of thing. Lab time, some people call it, or off bench time. I know Leela Biss calls it, where students are in the studio for double the length. You can also make students take longer lessons, which I think most students need. Most students shouldn't be in half-hour lessons. They're just ridiculous, They're just so stressful for anyone over the age of 6, maybe. They just, it's not enough time. And the other thing you can do, which I know you would say as well, is to let go of some stuff. You don't have to get to everything. You don't have to hear all their scales this week. You can give yourself permission to just, okay, this one week, maybe we'll cut out of that 5 minutes early and play a game.
And as you say, the impact of playing a game, not only in the relationship you have with the child, but also the learning that they'll experience, could well have a far greater impact than the scales you were going to do in the last 5 minutes of the lesson anyway, right?
Exactly, and it's going to accelerate the rest of it because they're going to actually know what a crotchet rest is, instead of asking you 1 billion times, So, because they're going to actually remember it. So it's saving you time.
That's great. Okay, so let's talk about some of the games. I want to get to the guts of this and share some of these cool ideas you've got, because literally, when you go to Nicola's blog, you'll be blown away. There is so much great stuff there, which is why I wanted to get you on the show. So many good ideas and so creative. I don't know how you do it. What are some of your most favourite games that you find your students really love?
Well, they like a lot of them. There's a few, the landmark landmines, which I shared recently, and Symbol Splash, which was at the start of the year. They love that one because you fall in the water. Fall in the water in inverted commas. But the one which isn't a board game, which I actually have a giant floor staff. You ever seen one of those? So it's like a fabric staff that's enormous.
It. Yeah, like a mat on the floor, but it's just cloth.
Yeah, but it's just a big staff. So I sewed that up a while ago, and they love that. And it's one of those quick things where I can just ask them to find all the landmark notes if they're working on that, or the youngest kids will do a race where they step or skip up the staff. So I get little toys and we put them at the bottom line. So they're just understanding steps and skips, but they're interacting with it and they're moving stuff around. So they really get it.
Yeah.
And we also play like Grand Staff Twister, where it could be like right hand, base F or whatever, instead of having the colored circles that you have in Twister.
I love it. So talk us through the landmark landmines. Is that what it is? Because
landmark landmines.
Because I actually found out about that. The reason I got you on this show today was because I found out about that and went, "Oh, this is so cool." and I've set it aside to play it with one of my students. So this is something that can people find this on your website?
Yeah, we'll put a link to it. Yeah, so
and
landmark
just give us an
landmines.
overview. How does it work? Because I love it.
So it's you're working your way up the grand staff. Again, steps and skips. It's reinforcing, but if they land on a landmark note, they need to name the landmark note. Otherwise, they've hit a landmine, and that sends them all the way back down to the bottom of the staff. So that's the basic premise, and they work their way the whole way up the staff. So it's reinforcing steps and skips and landmark notes
and
together.
They have to say the landmark note really quickly or something?
Depends on their age. I
Okay.
mean, I had 2 6-year-olds playing it recently, and I gave them a lot of time.
Okay.
You don't want to be too mean about it, but it depends. If they've been studying for a while, yeah, they should, say it straight away.
And for something like this, like really simple concept, you're testing or working with students on landmark notes. You better explain what are landmark notes in case teachers aren't familiar with this.
Oh, so landmark notes are used in several different method books as a way for students to learn the notes on the staff. So there's just specific notes that you're supposed to remember straight off, and then you work the other notes out from there as an alternative to mnemonics and that sort of stuff. So it's just bass C, bass F, middle C, treble G, treble C. I didn't even ask them to name like the high C and the low C in that one because it was designed for beginners. So no, not double ledger lines.
Not 2 ledger lines down. Yeah. So you're testing that they are getting familiar with the landmark notes, and they can move in steps or skips, so intervals of seconds or thirds. Yeah. So the thing I love about it is, one, it's fun. It's away from the piano. It's moving things on paper. It's having a laugh, but it's still, as you say, it's testing the knowledge of those things, and it's reinforcing them without being sitting at the piano and on a bit of manuscripts. Okay, what's pointing at this and saying what's this? Pointing at this and saying what's this? And look, I fully admit I've been known to do that before. We all do this sometimes. If we know a student needs to know these landmark notes, but we don't have a structure around it for playing a game about it, that's what we would do, right? And that's why I'm so keen to share some of these things that you've got, because they're just brilliant and so creative. So that's a really great one.
And they're all born out of that exact situation, where something like that, where sitting in a lesson and thinking, okay, I really shouldn't be just pointing to these notes. So then I go and make a game. So they're all from some situation like that.
Where do you
get the boredom out of it?
Ideas.
Just like that. It's just some specific problem that I'm having in a lesson, or something a student's not getting, something I wish I could drill in a different way. So I think, okay, what would be a good way to do this? And then you add a twist. So there always has to be a twist. Yeah. So like the landmines there, the twist is that you fall all the way back to the bottom of the staff, or like cymbal splash, that you fall in the water and you have to swim back to shore in that one.
So tell us about the cymbal splash. Is that what it's called?
Cymbal splash, yeah, that was for like grade 2 students to learn, or grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, there's different levels, to learn cymbals. So like, crescendo, diminuendo, rit,
symbols.
that sort of stuff.
SYMBOLS. I was picturing, I was picturing CYMBOLS.
Symbols, like
symbols. Because one of the symbols on a drum kit's got a splash symbol, so there you
go. That kind of makes sense, yeah.
All right, so cymbal splash. So, sorry, carry on.
So they are going on stepping stones in that one. It's another board game, and they have to name these different symbols, and if they get one wrong, they fall into the water and they have to swim back to shore, which means basically start again. So there always has to be some kind of twist to it. Otherwise otherwise they'll see right through it. It's a flashcard. Like, they'll see that it's just flashcards.
Right. Otherwise. So that's, in your opinion, the big difference between creating something that's just flashcarding and something that's a game based.
Yeah.
That there has to be if they do something wrong, there's got to be a penalty, or as you call it, a twist.
Yeah, or not even, it doesn't have to be a penalty. It could be a way for them to get ahead either, but it has to be something that makes it a game,
Yeah.
It has to be convincing.
Yeah.
That it's really a game.
Kids will see through it. No,
Yeah.
It's great. Okay, so we've heard a couple of your games. I'm really interested. Are you able to talk us through the games that you're giving away in your freebie today?
Sure, yeah.
Can we go through
So
those?
the first one is Dynamic Dynamo. So that's a card game. And in that one, they're collecting matching dynamics. The twist being there's always a twist. If you get one of the blue cards, you have to act out the dynamic in order to keep the card. So you have to name it, but act it out while you're naming it. So you would do crescendo, but you would start off at a whisper and get louder and louder as you say it, or you would yell fortissimo or whisper
Kids would love
pianissimo, that sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. So
That
it's just
sounds great.
and they're really learning what it means rather than just telling you like some memorized definition,
Brilliant.
moderately loud or whatever that means nothing to kids.
Yes, that's great, and that would work so well in any kind of group or a summer camp program. Like that's a brilliant. But it's so simple when you think about it.
It is, yeah. It has to be a simple twist. It can't be anything too complicated. Yeah. The good thing about that one for teachers, which they'll like, is that you can time it. So you can do it by time rather than it has to end. So if you want to fit it into the last 2 minutes of a lesson, that's how long it'll take because it'll just be done when it's done. So
right, that's great. And you've given us or listeners who go to the show notes can grab the actual cards they need. You've got them ready to print out, haven't you?
Yeah, they're all ready to print out. Those ones will even work on black and white because there's a pattern in the background. So if you need to save ink, that'll work too. And there's optional decorative backs, so you don't have to use them, but they're there for fun if you want.
Brilliant. I love it. Okay, so that's Dynamic Dynamo. That's one of the freebies for today. What's the second one?
So the second one is Signature Sprint.
So this is time
I think
signatures,
this one,
or key signatures.
Key signatures, sort of / scales, whichever one you want to call it, depending on your students. So that one is a printable paper keyboard that you can cut out that'll fold up again. So you tape it all together and it lies on the floor. And then students start at the bottom of the keyboard and they get a specific key signature that they have to work up the keyboard in. So they're rolling the dice and say they get 6, they're moving up the keyboard, but they have to move up including the sharps of the key signature they're in.
So they say like G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp.
Yes,
sort of
exactly.
Thing. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So if you had beginning students and all they know is, 1 flat, 1 sharp, that's the only ones that are in the pack.
Mm-hmm.
You just take out all the other ones, or you could use it for students that know the whole circle of fifths, either or.
Great. Yeah, I love it. It's, again, simple, but such a great practical way of getting these key signatures and scale notes learned. It's really
good. And visualizing them up the whole keyboard. So it's not like just this isolated scale, because often they can get stuck. They know the F sharp at the top of the G major scale, but they don't know the one that's right beside the G they started on.
Yeah,
so they need to see it the whole way up, that it kind of applies to the whole thing.
And also it'll help with ledger lines and understanding that.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Okay. And your last one's called Line Space Leapfrog.
Yes, Line Space Leapfrog. So this is a board game one. And in this one, they're understanding lines and spaces. But the bonus is if they name the note as well, they get to either move 2 spaces forward if they're at the front, or leapfrog over the next player. So that's the twist. So they're working their way up, but it's quite fun because they get to skip over each other's counters if they're good at their note names. And this one is also great because you can use it with a mixed group. I have a lot of mixed groups in my group classes, so I often design them that way where you can have a cheat sheet. So if one student is really good at note names, they don't get anything, and another one is working on the note names, but they're not quite sure of the landmark notes yet, so they might just get the landmark notes as their cheat sheet. And then a really young student will get the whole staff because it's difficult enough for them to identify which note that is on their sheet. That's enough if they're 4. So they get the whole staff with all the letter names printed in.
Oh, it's great. Well, I hope this is giving people who are listening the feeling that they could do this themselves too. I don't want I'll start this again. While it's great that there are so many resources out there for all of us teachers on blogs like yours, there's many others, what I hope an episode like today will show is that actually any of us can do this if we just think a little bit about a problem that our student has, and particularly problems. I think what you've done is you've taken problems that students are having all the time, like that keep coming up and that all the students share, and going, all right, I've got to think of something a little bit more creative in how I approach this. And then the game comes out of that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, other teachers will hear this and go, I've got that kid that always struggles with this, or all my students really find this hard. And yes, we can go to Nicola's website and grab some great ideas, but also have a think yourself about, is there a way that you could formulate a game? And I imagine you've probably had a few little fails along the way, have you, Nicola, in creating these games that maybe some didn't work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, especially at the beginning, the thing I say now about having a twist, like some of them were kind of lame, to be honest. They weren't in the beginning. Or the biggest mistake I think you can make with games is that you don't buy into it. So if you don't really sell the premise, they're not going to have fun with it either. So you need to buy into the imagination of it.
Yeah.
You need to step into it yourself.
Yeah. And as for any teaching of particularly young students, you have to be in it. You've got to be passionate. You've got to be enthusiastic. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, you're talking to a wall,
Exactly. Yeah. So get off the chair, get on the floor, grab some games. I think this is what we're talking about today. Could you tell us, do you have any other recommendations of sites or resources that teachers could use?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of good bloggers out there with games. Susan Parody is the Parodies, I'm not sure, but
Parody, yeah.
Yeah, Parody. She's probably the longest standing one. Her games are wonderful. Colour My Piano, Joy Moran. Sarah's Music Studio, she started putting up some. Sarah Campbell. Tracy Selly, and lots of others. But I actually have a post on my site that I've organized all the free games that I know about by what concept they're covered in them. Cool. So I can link to that, because that'll link you out. They're all the free ones that I can find, and I'm always looking for more. So if people have other ideas that aren't on there, I'd love to add them.
Yes, let's share that. That sounds great. Fantastic. Well, look, I think that's been a really good summary of what you can do. You've given me some ideas, and I'm not going to do the old flashcards in quite the same way anymore. So thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm for games with us. It's been great fun.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Now you can find, as we've talked about, lots of great creative teaching freebies and ideas at Nicola's blog. The blog is colourfulkeys.ie. Now you spell it COLOURFULKEYS. So it's the Australian/British spelling of colourful with the U.
Yep.
Colourfulkeys.ie /Irish, yeah. .ie, and you can find everything that Nicola's got going on over there. She's an absolute superstar in creative ideas, and I'm very thankful that you're, one, able to come on the podcast today and be on the other side of the process, which has been great fun. And thank you for all that you're doing for helping me get all of my ideas and things out there for teachers around the world. Really appreciate it. Oh,
you're welcome. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. Okay, so don't forget to get your freebie download available at timtopham.com/episode 80. And, of course, the show notes, as usual, have links from today, a full transcript, and lots more information. If you get a chance to leave a review, I would totally appreciate it. You can do that and find out how to leave a review on iTunes at timtopham.com/iTunes. Next week, we'll be finishing this month's theme by exploring how to teach late beginner and intermediate piano music. So how do you decide what's important? How do you pull apart the elements of a piece? And how can you best prepare your student for learning what they're about to learn before they've even seen music? that's all on next week's show. I've got a great download for you with that show as well, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, Nicola. See you next time.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen,
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's InnerCircle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.